That's a trick. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. Welcome to the public information session on the Offshore Morro Bay Wind Project with Castle Wind, which is a joint venture between Trident Wind and ENBW. My name is Brad Britton. I am here to help facilitate tonight. My job is to help you get connected to the information that's here tonight, to get engaged in the discussion and the conversation, and to help clarify things and work through the questions that you have. So my job is to do my best to help you get what you need out of tonight and share the information and understand the intention that Castle has for this project. I've been in this area for almost 20 years now, and I do organizational work where I help cities and local businesses and nonprofits just do what they do better, and I love my job, and this is part of it. So what I'd like to do is just share with you our game plan for tonight and let you know what's coming so you can know how to participate during the night. You got lots of options. All right, we're in the introduction, obviously. After we're done with the setup here, what we're going to do is we're going to move into a presentation. Presentation is, if you've been to one of the presentations before, it's going to be there's going to be some similar information, and then there's some new information that's been gathered about the project. So we're going to talk about different aspects, the impact, the technology, the economic impact, environmental impact, and visual impact. We've got a lot of different things to share about, and that will be covered in the presentation. One new thing that will be included is some information about how this will impact the area economically. So that'll be all included in the presentation piece. Once we're done with that, and as we're going along, we are going to ask you, as things come up, to write down the questions that you have. So there's these nice big cards, and I'll start passing them out. We've got some extra pens in case you didn't bring one. But what we'd like to do is use these cards as a way to gather the questions that you have. So the idea will be that we'll collect those, and then we'll kind of categorize them in families of types of questions, and then we'll just go through each family of questions and get them answered as best we can. At the end of that point, there may be questions that come up that you want to get more detail on, or things that just come up to you as you've heard some of the answers from those written questions. So we're going to give you an opportunity to come to the mic and ask questions. The reason why we do it in that two-stage process is it really allows us to use our time really effectively, and it keeps the questions in certain families, and so that helps us stay on topic and answer those completely in that area. All right? So then if we've got time, and hopefully we can get there, then we actually want to create some space for you to just share your thoughts about the project. So just take like 30 seconds or a minute to share your thoughts about what's coming up for you about this project, good, bad, or indifferent. So that's a hope. It's not necessarily a guarantee. The main agenda and the main purpose is to get information and also get your questions and try to get them clarified. That's the heart of it. And then if we have time, it's kind of icing on the cake. We'll have time to hear your thoughts about whatever you want to share. And then we'll close out and call it a night. All right? Okay. So there are other ways to participate other than tonight, and we just want to make sure that you know the options. So there is an email address, which is info@tridentwinds.com. If you use that email address, that address will allow you to ask questions after tonight, so if something comes up, or share your thoughts about the project. So you can use that. We're also passing around 2 legal pads, which are contact sheets. So if you put your name and your email on there, Castle Wind will push information out to you about the next steps in the project as they have that. So if you're on that list, you will get the information that they're sharing at the time they're sharing it. And from what I understand, that's it. There's no other use. We don't use it in any other way. Is that correct?
That's
okay.
correct.
Good. And then there's also information on the city's website. So if you go on to the Morro Bay City's website and you search Trident, it will get you to the section of the website which will give you basic information about the project. Okay, so one little clarification before we dive in. So I've done a lot of these over time, and this public information situation is different than a formal hearing. This is a preliminary process that is basically hosted by Castle. This is not the city of Morro Bay. They are in cooperation with Castle to provide this venue and the videotaping, and they're supporting in that way in what they call a memorandum of cooperation. Yet the real meeting is hosted by Castle to share information. Now, there is a formal process, which I'm sure that Alla will get into, that once an application is made formally to initiate this process, then there's a whole cascade of very formal meetings and benchmarks and systems and evaluations and data that has to be collected. And those are public hearings where they have to be noticed, they have to be Brown Act, they can't be, they must be compliant with all the rules and regulations, and then you have the ability to participate in those. There's going to be a lot more data there. There's going to be a lot more requirements of how much research has to be collected to understand the impact, like an environmental impact report. And that's different than what this is. So the reason I mention that is because the level of data is not going to be as detailed as that stage of the process, because we're really at the beginning. And just want to set your expectations about what's going to be shared tonight. Okay, so I'd like to introduce our presenters so that we can dive into part 2 around the presentation. And Alla Weinstein is a technologist by background. And I've gotten to know Alla briefly over the last couple of weeks. They've asked me to come in and help with this process because my expertise is more around facilitation. It's not technology. That's her job. And so Alla is a technologist, and her specialty has been in energy engineering, and specifically started her career on the terrestrial side, and now in the later part of her career is really focused on marine options, including wave technology and now wind. One of her specialties is really navigating the process to make things come to fruition. And in that process, she believes in engaging the stakeholders thoroughly, so to make that happen. So I'm going to let her talk more about herself and then introduce her colleague, Maren, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. The last time I was in front of you was December of 2015. You may wonder why it took us so long to get from here today and have another update, but I'll explain to you why. There is a lot of things that happened since 2015, and one very important element is that we formed a joint venture with a German utility, EnBW, and Maren is representing EnBW, and she'll talk about her own background. I am an electrical engineer. I've been in the industry longer than I want to admit. Half of my career had nothing to do with renewable energy. I spent a lot of years putting avionics on airplanes and making them know where they go. And then kind of halfway through, I was introduced to wave energy technology that caught my attention. And the reason why it caught my attention is because it was good for the world. It was something utilizing energy that would not be destructive, but more constructive. And it was something interesting. It was never done before, and I was at the point looking for some challenge. Little did I know back then where the challenge would lead me, but along the way, I did learn a lot of things, and one of those things was how much energy is there in the ocean for us to use. That energy can be represented in multiple forms. It can be wave, it can be tidal, it can be wind, it can be solar, any form you want to take. And realizing where technology is on its development cycle, after spending about 7 years in wave energy, I realized that's not going to happen when I'm here, and I wanted to get something done while I was still on the planet. I said, we need to find something a little bit more that's ready for commercial exploitation. And that became development of the floating offshore wind substructure. The ocean or the continental shelf off the west coast of the United States is very deep, very fast. And so because of that, you cannot do what Europeans were able to do or what is going on the east coast of the United States, where you can put structures on the bottom of the ocean floor. That is limited to about, I would say about 100 maybe feet, maybe 300 feet at the most. And so you have to go into the floating support structure in order to be able to capture the wind off the coast of United States, which is in much, much deeper waters. So until that technology was available, you couldn't even think about offshore wind. And so the reason why you haven't heard a lot about the offshore wind, because technology wasn't there. It wasn't possible to capture it. So once we developed the floating support structure technology, now we could start talking about the project. And it's a culmination of everything you kind of do in your life. In my case, it was knowing and learning how to do permitting in marine environment that was related to the wave energy, and then knowing technology maturity that led me back in 2015 to say, time to put it all together. And because the permitting process takes a long time, we really need to start now in order to benefit California that was already on the path to increase its amount of renewable energy that will be put forward to consumers. So how it all kind of came together. However, you cannot do the project with a little startup from Seattle. It takes a lot more effort, and as I say, it takes a village to raise the child. Actually, I didn't say that. Hillary Clinton did. It takes a large team and a lot of money to make a project like that to happen. And so I was very fortunate to find a very, very good partner, which is EnBW. Don't ask me to pronounce their full name. I'll leave that to Marin to do. But EnBW is the second largest utility in Germany. Comparison-wise, they're just about as big as PG&E, whom you know very well. It's 20,000 people as an employees. Their revenues are about the same. Also, what's interesting, they're a utility. They service customers. They bring energy to and sell them to consumers. They were a nuclear utility until German government passed a law after Fukushima disaster to shut down all the nuclear plants. So they used to have 5, now they only have 2, and they're shutting down those 2. So they had to go through the same transformation as what PG&E is looking right now of basically saying, I have to find my other future because this, what I had, is not going to be there. They provide water, gas, electricity, and they have revamped their whole future to move away from fossil fuel generation and nuclear to renewable energy. And offshore wind is their primary direction. Today, already, they have, in various stages of development, construction, or operation, close to 2 gigawatts of installed capacity, and 2 gigawatts is equivalent to what Diablo Canyon produces, or half of what the Morro Bay plant used to produce at some point in its life. So it's a large amount of energy, but what's also very important is the operational experience. What you're going to hear in the second half of the presentation is not projections, but it's reality. This is what happened when a project came to a community, when things were installed. This is what you're going to hear, real stories from real people, from real experience. And the other very, very important element, EnBW doesn't just develop projects and then sells them off. They come, they develop, they install, and they operate them for the duration of the project life, which is very, very important because it is not a company that's here for just a short time. They come and they stay.
We stay.
That's right. So that is our partner in the project, and I'll now give you the overview of why we're doing what we're doing and where things are and what's going to happen going forward. So what happened since we submitted our unsolicited lease request back in January of 2016.
I want to do a reminder. So as you develop questions, I want you to pass them in so that I can start sorting them and collecting them. So as you have them, you can kind of wave them up for me. That would be really helpful. Sorry.
And if you don't have a pen, there is a bunch of pens in the back.
And I have another 200 in my bag, so there's plenty.
Right. So the whole process, in a way, in California, in a way, started when Trident Winds at the time submitted unsolicited lease requests to the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management. The law, which is regulated by federal regulation, has allowed developer to do this first step where a developer basically says, I'm willing to take the risk, I'm willing to do all the work that needs to be done, and here's what I did. Then the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management required by law again to see if other developers are interested in the same area as been identified by the first developer. So when we submitted that unsolicited lease request, the next step that followed, Governor Brown requested the federal government to form intergovernmental task force that includes the state government, local government, tribal governments, and federal government. That task force was created in about June timeframe of 2016. It had its first meeting in October of 2016. But prior to that meeting, BOEM has issued request for information nomination, which was that step that they had to do to see if anybody was interested in the same site. And Equinor, formerly known as Statoil, expressed an interest in the site and said, yeah, we're interested as well. Effectively, what happened at that point, which was in September of 2016, it reset the clock to zero. Because at that point, we could no longer do things on an unsolicited basis or uncompetitive basis. The government took over the process, and now it became a competitive process. So through the competitive process, the first step in that process is that the government, together with state governments, have to identify potential wind energy areas along the coast of California, which is what they did. And by June of 2017, they were ready to have the next presentation, say, here are the potential wind energy areas. However, in June of 2017, Department of Defense issued a map as a result of their work and effectively said there are no places in Central California that's possible to develop because that's our territory. We have activities, multiple different activities, about 5 branches of the military that happen to be happening right here in Central California. It took about a year from that point till about June of this year to negotiate options with the Department of Defense that says, yeah, maybe we can do something if you do something else. And we've been following that process and talking to Department of Defense as a Castle Wind, first Trident and then Castle Wind, for about 2 years. I believe we are now closer to actually knowing what will be possible. It does limit how much could be developed in Central California with present administration and where we are right now. Things may change in the future, but for today, it's very limited opportunities. Most of the wind resources in the north, and there is less conflicts with the military in the north, so some work will continue to be done in the north, even though there are other issues, which is transmission lines. There is really no strong transmission lines to take the energy that's generated and provide it to consumers. Then what happened in 2018? First of all, we closed our transaction with the NBW, and now we have a partner. That happened in the end of March. On April 15, we submitted a request to California Independent System Operator for the grid connection at Morro Bay, and we're now in what's known as a queue. In other words, we're in line for the grid connection. I'm not going to go through the process the way CAISO uses, but in a nutshell, they study all these requests in a cluster. And so we're in so-called cluster 11 with all the other submittals that happen at the same time. Then we are resolving the DoD issue, and I'll explain to you a little bit later on how it's going to show up. We will talk about that map that's over there on the left-hand side. That is the map of potential site, and I'll explain what may or may not be happening. But until we have final say, it is only a draft and potential. So don't take it that that is what it is. It's just that is what we're projecting is going to happen. And then we also found out that, I'm sure you know too, that there is a Hearst Castle there, and it just happens that the installation would be right in front of the Hearst Castle. And because we don't have a lot of places to maneuver, we had to go and talk to Mr. Hearst. So we did. Mr. Hearst was not very happy that we did not come to him first, but we did come there and we did talk. And the images that you will see on the wall are the projections of the visual impact from the Hearst Castle, because that is the highest point. I mean, the mountains or the range that the Hearst family owns actually go higher, but we took the Hearst Castle because a lot of people go there. And it was important to see what you may be able to see. I have to admit that I was actually surprised how little you will be able to see. I thought it would be a lot more. But the reason why it's so little is because we're very far offshore. The point from the Hearst Castle to like the first row, not the first row, but the units would be the closest to shore, would be over 30 miles. And your visibility is going to be limited. But because the castle is so high up, it's 1,600 feet, the horizon is much longer and further than if the person would be standing on shore. But that's for you to take a look, and you can see for yourself what you will see or not. So then on September 17th of this year, BOEM held its second task force meeting, and at that task force meeting, they effectively announced the potential wind energy areas, and I'll show you them as well. And so effectively, the process of auctioning out the sites for the wind energy development will commence this year in November when they publish the call for information and nomination. The city of Morro Bay is represented on the task force, so I'm sure there will be communications and information exchange as the process progresses, but it's happening. And so the other piece that happened, which is very important, on October 6th, last Saturday, Castle Wind signed a mutual benefits agreement with the Commercial Fishermen Organization of Morro Bay and Commercial Fishermen Association of the Port St. Louis. Why is it important? Normally, fishing issues or commercial fishing issues come later in the process, and they don't necessarily result in a good outcome. Because of the experience I had working with a Makah Indian tribe in Washington State, it was important, at least for me and my partners, to make sure that we address the commercial fishing issues sooner rather than later, because it is their workplace, and we will be impacting the workplace. So we had to do it, and so we did it, and we're very happy that we were able to do it, and I think everybody will be happier going forward because they know what to expect, we know what to expect, and that's extremely important for everybody. So this is where we are. Now let's talk about why would we even be thinking about offshore wind. You may have heard that California in 2015 passed a law to require utilities to sell electricity that has been generated from renewable energy up to 50% of their load. That law has now passed to 100%. So by 2045, Californian utilities have to buy 100% of their 60% of their generation from renewable energy sources. That is already a law on the books. So that accelerated the 50% to, I think, 2020, if I remember right, or 2025, where it was much later before. The other 40% has to come from the clean air. In other words, the pollution has to be reduced to maintain or to reach the clean air requirements. That's how you get 100%. 100% not only just renewable generation, but it's also Clean Air Act. And so between the two of them, that is the law that's now called SB 100. And it's a state law that has been passed on the 31st of August. So because of that, utilities, community choice aggregators, end users, anybody you want to take, is going to be looking for additional generation. And that additional generation can come from new sources of energy. It could come potential from out of state, or it can come from wherever. Until now, the California Public Utilities Commission has not included offshore wind in their projections, Most of their projections are based on solar and lots and lots and lots of batteries. And you may think that batteries is good. Well, they don't pollute as emissions, but they're not exactly friendly to the environment, especially if you go into the raw materials that are required to bring the batteries. And at the same time, when you look at the quantity of those batteries that would be required, you start wondering where you can even get from here to there. And these are all the questions that are at the California Public Utilities Commission, California Energy Commission. Something has to be done. And so when we proposed to look at offshore wind back in 2015, people weren't thinking about it, but now they are. Now the discussion of offshore wind is at a very high level at California Energy Commission, at CPUC, at the CAISO, and it's up to us to demonstrate what it can do. And what it can do is very nicely demonstrated right here. Do I type it? Okay.
Nope.
No.
This one here.
Okay, got it. Yeah. I need a technical assistance here. Okay. You probably heard the term duck curve. You may or may not have heard. This is basically where you have generation from various sources, then comes solar, okay, which is going to generate a lot of energy at the same time of the day. And then you come to the evening hours, and all the solar went away, but you still have demand. And in fact, demand grows in the second half of the day. So where's that energy going to come from? Well, today, it's coming from fossil fuel plants that are kept running. They're called pico plants, that are kept running for the sole purpose of being able to come online when the demand is still there, but solar is no longer there. Now, part of it will eventually be replaced by batteries, and you can, substitute about 4 hours of it. Why? Because today we don't have batteries technologies that last more than 4 hours. We don't have battery technologies that can compensate for various atmospheric conditions like temperature differences. And so technology is limited in what can produce. And so you need something else in addition to. And so the chart on the top is an interesting chart. These vertical bars, that's a demand by PG&E. On a 24-hour basis, this is the way the profile of demand looks like. So you have smaller demand while you're still sleeping. Then the demand goes up when people are up, and your industrial demand is there. And when people come back home and they turn on televisions and everything else and every computer in the world, demand grows up. On the other hand, this is your solar profile. Solar is gone. This is your onshore wind profile, not a lot of it, but this line is the offshore wind. And this is the offshore wind profile from the buoy that's sitting right outside, right here, and I can show you on the map where it is, where we downloaded the data for the last 27 years and just simply profiled it. And this would be the resource that is available there. It's not 100%, but a lot better than just solar or just onshore wind. And that's the important factor, because to the California Public Utilities Commission, they want stability. They want to be able to supply the energy when the people need it, and that's called adequacy of supply. And today, the supply is not adequate. In some locations, especially in LA, which already had the nuclear plant shut down, that adequacy is limited. So that becomes very important, and that's why offshore wind could potentially become a very important resource, as long as we can figure out how to deal with the military constraints. Now, you can think about and say, okay, but what about technology? You're right, that's a good question. In Europe, today, most of the installations are fixed to the bottom of the ocean floor because the water depth is such that you can do it. West coast of the United States, and especially California, you cannot do that. So you need floating technology. So the turbines technology doesn't change whether you sit on a fixed foundation or you are on a floating foundation. But the substructure is different. And so because of that, there is a lot of experience in Europe, almost 16 gigawatts. And 16 gigawatts is Morro Bay plant times 16. That's how much is installed already in Europe. There is a lot of experience on how to operate offshore wind farms. The floating support structures came about back in 2009, which was the first installation by Equinor, formerly Statoil, and then followed in 2011 by my prior company called Principal Power with a wind float technology. Since then, 4 more prototypes been installed to demonstrate whether different principles of operation will work. And last year, again, Equinor installed 30 megawatts, which is 5 units of 5 units of 6 megawatts each in UK. And next year, Principal Power will install 25 megawatts, which would be 3 units with 9.5 megawatt turbines in Portugal. And they're going to install another 25 megawatts in France and another 50 megawatts in UK. So by the end of 2019-2020, we will probably have close to 100 megawatts of floating installations in UK, in France, and in Portugal. Why is it important? Because you need field experience. You need to demonstrate that principle works, but not only principle, you have now demonstrated that it's not just single device, but you went also for larger turbines, and they will work fine. So if you put everything in perspective, if by 2020 I have 100 megawatts or more of installed capacity using 8 or 9 megawatt turbines, that means by the time I'm done with the permitting, which would be another 5 years or so away, I will have commercially available technology. And that becomes very, very important. So we have demonstrated the principle of operation. We are now demonstrating that it can survive, in multiple units and structures and whatever. And that is what allowed, even the thought to come, hey, we now need to think about commercial installations. So just to give you an example of what technology looks like, here is a video
from full-scale 2 megawatt wind float prototype installed in October 2011, 5 kilometers off Aguçadora in the north of Portugal, has been successfully tested over the last 5 years. It has now been proven that this technological solution is perfectly reliable, even under adverse weather conditions, including waves that at times exceeded 17 meters. In July 2016, the decommissioning phase began and needed only 3 days of work at sea to disconnect the electric cable and the mooring lines from the wind float. It's a relatively simple process, with less environmental impact and substantially less cost when compared to decommissioning conventional offshore wind solutions. After disconnecting the power cable from the platform, the moorings that anchored it were removed and the structure was towed 400 kilometers to Sines Harbour. One local tug vessel with 75 tons bollard pull and less than 500 tons displacement was used throughout this entire process. Tugs like this are commonly available at port facilities around the world. The WF1 platform was moored at multi-purpose Port Sines terminal. There, the first step was to do some additional decommissioning work on the wind float structure. And then, in a more complex process, to remove the turbine. This was completed by a team from Vestas in 2 days, using mobile onshore cranes, and it was the first time that a wind turbine had been dismounted from a floating structure. The full process of decommissioning was conducted safely, quickly, and without incident, and did no harm to the seabed. The operation demonstrated that it's possible to unhook the moorings quickly and safely, and proved the viability of using standard, low-cost towing vessels and regular onshore cranes to dismount the turbine. The decommissioning process demonstrated a major change for operation and maintenance procedures. The unit can be towed back to shore where major repairs can be done using much lower cost methods than the current conventional approach. Last but not least, it did not require expensive offshore contractors or heavy lift operations at sea. The WindFloat was designed to be easier and less expensive to install, transport and maintain, and to reduce operating costs and produce substantially less environmental impact. Results from the prototype deployment are encouraging and mean new opportunities for transitional and deep-water offshore wind development. After 5 years operating offshore, the turbine is still in very good condition and will now be used at a different project. Inspections to the WindFloat hull and the rest of the equipment reveal that the platform itself is in excellent condition. Principal Power's mission is to make the WindFloat the most competitive, safe, reliable and environmentally friendly technology for deep-water offshore wind projects, while enabling global offshore wind markets to reach their full potential. This project's success is indicative of remarkable progress towards that goal.
So it got disassembled, and then you would wonder what happened to it. It got reassembled in UK. This is the first ever any offshore installation that was placed somewhere for 5 years of operation, then was taken apart and taken to another place and installed again, and is going to be there for the next 20 years. So that kind of proves not only technology readiness, but it's also its flexibility and ability to be moved to locations if necessary somewhere else. It's never been done before by anybody, and it's just incredible that it did happen. But you can go in UK next year, and you will see the same WindFloat 1 operating in a different location. So let's go talk about California and where we are in the process. As I said, the wind resource is the best in Northern California, and you can see it right here, the darker colors, which is what really showing the best resource. But Northern California has transmission issues, but Central California has military issues. Not sure which one is worse, which one is better. We just have to work with what we have. So when we were selecting site location back in 2015, we were looking for things that would be minimizing visual pollution, minimizing interference with marine life, minimizing interference with commercial fishing, and a lot of other things, including shipping lanes as well. And I think we believe that the site that we kind of getting to have achieved all those criteria. We also wanted to reuse the infrastructure on shore, which is why we chose the Morro Bay out of other locations that were available. The important part about the Morro Bay itself, you have, the old plant was a thermal plant, so it had a tunnel that went out to the ocean to discharge the water. We can use this tunnel now to bring the cable that is going to connect the installation and deliver energy to the substation that happens to be right here, and that's a PG&E substation. So effectively, we don't have to disturb the shoreline at all. We can just use that tunnel, clean it out, get rid of all the sand in there, and bring the cable right in there. That becomes very important because environmentally, it is effectively not disturbing the shoreline. We would probably be following the same procedures as other cables were done that are coming out of Los Osos, and you may know that there is about 7 telecom cables that are coming out of there. But as we go offshore, things will be very different. So when we identified the site, that was our original submittal. That was the site that we identified back in 2015, which we submitted as an unsolicited lease request. You see this pink line? That's part of the issue with the military, because below that pink line, going south, is a place called Point Mugu Sea Range. And I'll tell you a little bit more where it is, and there is a better map to show it. So that was the original site. Remember I told you about the buoy that gave us the data about the offshore wind? Here it is. We couldn't put a buoy closer to get a lot of data, and that's a very good buoy because it had 27 years worth of good wind and wave data that we can extrapolate to the hub height, which is over 100 meters high, or 300 feet, right? 300 yards. We've been trying to go between metric and imperial system here the whole afternoon. Okay? However, permitting takes a long, long time, and it requires permits from state, local government, but it's basically regulated by the federal regulations under the NEPA. NEPA stands for National Environmental Policy Act. That is the overarching process that we have to follow. On a state level, it's more a consistency review because the state does not have the jurisdiction that far offshore. State jurisdiction ends at 3 miles out, but when you go 30 miles out, it's a federal waters. So we go under the NEPA process, but then the state makes sure that whatever we do also abides and complies with the state requirements. So there are a total 33 permits between federal, state, local, and tribal governments. And then there is also environmental groups that will have to have, though they don't permit, they have something to say about it. And so they included in this list as well. And here's the second page of permits. And then there is California Independent System Operator. That is, like I mentioned, it's a process that goes in parallel. So effectively, we are right here in this process. At the beginning, we submitted application. We're now in the queue. But as you can see, their process kind of goes in parallel with the utilities and also the permitting, engineering, construction, and eventually everything comes together. It's important to have a grid access because if you don't, where would you put the energy? You have to have some place. So on September 17th, the Intergovernmental Task Force met and they presented draft wind energy areas. Keep in mind they are draft. That is what they presented on the 17th of September. They also said that on November, sometime middle of November, they're going to come out with a call for already areas that they plan to auction. Whether all these areas in Central California will remain on the call or not, we do not know yet. We will have to wait until that will happen. But on that date, they identified 3 areas. One off the Diablo Canyon, that's what they call it Diablo Canyon. Second one is Morro Bay, and then there is a Morro Bay North. These are the 3 areas in Central Coast. And then there is Northern Coast that they identified in Humboldt County. But we're not talking about North Coast here. We're only going to focus on Central California. Here are the conflicts for the military. This is our original site that we identified. And all these other places, they're called warning areas. Warning areas because something is happening there due to the military. So the issues are right here. That's the Point Mugu Sea Range. And why is that an issue? Because that's a sea range where they test smart munitions, smart missiles. And when those missiles are tested, they may or may not work the way you think they should work. And they could explode where you don't want them to explode. There are some pictures which show missiles that were launched here ended up in San Francisco. It happens. That's why it's a test range, okay? You can't predict exactly what will happen. And so to the military, it's very important because not only it tests the missile from the United States, but they actually test other missiles from other governments. And so it is a very, very important test site. That's one piece. The second piece is what's known as military training routes. All these lines, these are routes for training of young pilots that just came out of the flight school. And they fly very low over the water, about 200 feet of altitude. But when they come to shore, they have to come in one of those routes. They cannot go anywhere else. And a particular route that's of a concern is this one that's called VR 1262. VR stands for visual. So it's not a route that's used at night. It's only used during the day because pilots have to see where they are, but they have to know the coordinates where they have to enter. And so if you project that out, you will see that we'll be crossing the area. So that the constraints that you have to navigate with. But that's not all. There is more. And what there is more is there is Edwards Air Force Base back in further inland. They test radars. And in order for them to test radars, they need to have a clean environment, meaning no turbines spinning. So because of all those constraints, you have to come up with something. And this is not all. There is more. Where is more? Vandenberg Air Force Base, over there, further south. They launch rockets into orbits. Well, what happens when the rocket goes into the sky? Not the one that came back where, one of the Space One, they actually brought the solid rocket fuel back to Earth, which was incredible. Normally, things just drop. So they call it a drop zone. And their drop zone is the whole thing. You don't know where things will drop. Even though they launch west and southwest, this is a drop zone. So things could happen. And because of all these conflicts, you know, we're dealing with the Air Force, we're dealing with Space Command, we're dealing with NAVAIR, and the only things that I don't believe we're dealing with is submarines, because they're in Hawaii and we're in Central California, and fortunately we don't have submarines down there. So as a result of all these conflicts, of all these discussions, one of the areas, as you saw, is Morro Bay, which is really the area that we identified originally. And this is how the area is identified today. But taking in consideration the military training route, in our opinion, this part of the area probably will not stay there, because if you take this VR, and I know you can't see it, can you turn off the lights for a minute? Because then you can see the line at least. Thank you. So this training route is over here. You can see this square, I mean the rectangle, right? So that needs to be extended, at least at southern boundary of it. And that means it will cut off the northern part of this site. And then if you look at the middle, the Point Mugu training route that's over here, and that may cut out this part or may not. We do not know yet. So the point I'm trying to make is this is the area that has been identified, but this is not yet the final. And so when we come through the whole process and we get all these conflicts chopped up or whatever, we will see what will end up. It's probably going to be something small, and it's probably going to be maybe even further west. But that's where we are right now. So we used that particular area, and then we did the visual projections. And what you will see over there is we went to the Hearst Castle. Actually, the parks, which manages the Hearst Castle, gave us the photographs from these points and other points along the road. So basically, they went with their photographer along the road where the bus takes the visitors up and down. And it's mostly on the downside of the road that you could potentially see things. Because if you see, the Hearst Castle is over here, right? And if you go down the road, this is your theoretical view shed, potentially. But you're not going to see the whole thing. You're only going to see this edge of the turbines. And that's what they're represented on those pictures. Those pictures are if you did not have any binoculars. It's just a human eye and a horizon that you will see from that particular altitude. The highest would be the Hearst Castle. Lower ones would be along the road going down the hill. So this is unassisted eye. If somebody wants to see something, you will need to bring binoculars, because as you will see on the pictures, it's not very visible. So the pictures on the bottom are on a clear day. Pictures on top are obviously night. They are representing the worst conditions where all the lights are on all the turbines. However, technology today is already advanced enough that the lights don't have to be on at all time, but they only turn on when there is an aircraft in the area. Because these routes, because this area is not really used by commercial airliners, there is, I mean, the entrance or the flight path into San Luis Obispo Airport, it goes over the Morro Rock. Where's my Morro Rock? Here it is. They go only about 3-4 miles offshore. They don't go too far. So effectively, you're not going to have aircraft flying in that particular area during the night. During the day, you probably will, because those are the training routes. During the night, not much there. And so theoretically, the only lights that could potentially be there are the ones that would be required by FAA for just marking where the installation is. And I cannot tell you today whether it's going to be the whole perimeter, or a few of them, or just the corners. Just don't know. So, but we'll see. But the point becomes, what we're representing there is the worst case scenario, which is important because it's not going to be any worse than that. So what's going to happen next? Well, next we're going to go through a very lengthy process. It's a multi-year process, and it starts with a call for nomination and information, and that call is supposed to happen in November. You will have opportunity along this whole process to provide your comments. At every step of the way, there is a commenting period. When call is issued, there will be a 60-day commenting period. After that, there will be the next step, which will be environmental assessment the government will be doing. Then sometime middle of the year or a little bit later, there will be proposed notice of sale that's going to say, we are going to sell these sites, and you will have again a chance to comment. Then there will be a final notice of sale. At that point, you don't have a chance to comment anymore. You can just watch who is going to win the auction. And that in itself becomes interesting. After somebody wins the auction, and we're hoping that we will win the auction, then the developer will start developing a project. And during that process, there is a lot of steps along the way as well. So I think that's about it that I wanted to say. So there is a lot of things that will happen, and that's kind of exactly what I just said. So it's the same thing as I said. Now we're going to turn it over to Maren and talk about the real stuff, not projections, but what really happens.
Jump in again. Does anybody need more new cards to write questions, or do they have questions that turn in? Okay, great. So for those of you that came late, what we're going to do is we're going to do written questions first. So I'll take these back to the back. And if anybody has a pen to share, that would be good. Do you need any cards? Okay, thank you. All right. Thank you. All right. Thanks for letting me butt in there. Go ahead, Martin.
Okay. Yes, thank you. My name is Maren Raumheimer. I'm German, but it's enough if you remember Maren, because I think the other thing is way too long anyways. I'm from profession a civil engineer, but as well as an HSE or safety engineer. I ended up in offshore wind like 8 years ago because of my HSE experience or my health and safety at work experience. My former company, I worked for an engineering company. I speak English. I have knowledge about safety at work. So why don't you go to the offshore wind farm? I was like, yeah, nice challenge. I will do that. So I ended up with EnBW because EnBW has the first commercial offshore wind farm in the Baltic Sea of Germany. And after a year, EnBW decided to ask me if I want to join their team, and I happily did that. And I stayed ever since, and it brought me here. So I'm really happy to bring you all my experience to answer your questions. If I can't answer your questions, I'm happy to take them with me to my company, talk to Eller, and give feedback afterwards. I'm within the operation and maintenance department, so we operate, maintain, and service our offshore wind farms. And I brought some general slides from EnBW because I think it's not so much known here. And we will start. Is it the right one? Yeah. We will start what we are. We are, as Ella just said, a German utility. I think we are the second biggest at the moment. Used to be third, but we made our way up. We have 5.5 million customers, 13 gigawatt generation in the portfolio, and around 21,000 employees, and a revenue of 22 billion euros. Please don't make me make it in US dollars. I can't. What we can do, so we basically have everything. We have electricity generation, trading, procurement, transmission, sales. We also in gas. We also operate and own grids. It's a subsidy of ours, but it's 100% subsidy, so I can say EnBW does it. We are in renewable energy and and sales, of course. So basically everything there is within the energy market, we do in Germany. And we're happy to share our knowledge. What we did is what Ella said before, the minute or a couple of weeks after Fukushima, the German government decided to shut down the nuclear power plants. And EnBW decided, since we are a nuclear power plant company, or we have a lot of nuclear power plants back in Germany, to go into the renewable, because that's the future. And as you see here, generation trading, we go down 80%, but renewable energy, we go up 250%. So this is what we are focusing on at the moment, and what we are focusing on the last 10 years, and we will continue doing that. And we are happy here to get our knowledge transferred to give you best benefits from what we learned. And it was a really hard learning process, let me tell you that. I can tell you a lot of stories, but maybe not in front of the video cameras. Then we have the grids going up as well, because in Germany, it's normally that in the north part of Germany, there's the most wind. So there are all the wind turbines, onshore and offshore, and we have to bring down all the electricity from the north to the south. There are three main grid lines. They are, we build them at the moment. So they will be up and running, and we are one of those grid companies as well. So as you see, we are away from the nuclear, and we are totally into renewables. But the most amazing thing about EnBW I learned when I was there the first year is actually that we have always been into the renewable sector. We always had hydropower plants. Our oldest one is from 1898. And I visited it. It's really amazing. So, as you hear, I love my job. So what do we have? We have offshore wind. These three, two of them are under construction at the moment, and one is under development. Those two, our babies, Baltic 1, our first one, it's a really small one, and Baltic 2, it's the newest one, it's from 2015, so it's 3 years old now. We have onshore wind, we have biogas, we have coal, where are the hydropower plants and nuclear power plants, you see them here. And photovoltaic, of course, we have as well. So you name it, we have it. We not only have it, we not only own it, but we also maintain and service it with our own people. And I think that is quite important. So we not just develop a power plant, build it, commission it, and then we sell it to someone else. So we really operate it, and we hire the people, and we pay the people, of course, and they are doing a really amazing and great job with the power plants. And this is what we actually want to install here as well, to also support the community with those jobs we create in the maintenance and operation of the power plants. And as I said, since 1898, so we have a lot of years of experience, not offshore, but within the renewables. That's a nice overview. I said it all. Why is here about offshore? One, it's not we don't own this wind farm, but we do also third-party operation. So what we do is that we feel confident enough with all our experience to say we can service other power plants as well with our people. So we create even more jobs again. We can do it here as well. There's a few impressions. It's Baltic 1. It's just 21 turbines. It's just small ones, 2.3 megawatt, but it's kind of our baby, and it's 8 years old. So it's preschool. What is it here? High school? High years? School? It's high school, maybe. No, it's primary school, isn't it? It's primary school.
Okay.
So EnBW operation and maintenance, I already said that. We do the commercial technical management. We tailor O&M solutions. So every wind farm is different. Every area is different. I can't compare the Baltic Sea to the North Sea, and I can't compare, of course, the Baltic to the U.S. coast. It wouldn't make sense. Pacific coast. So we have to adapt the knowledge, and we can share a lot of information. But we have, of course, to take into account the area we are working in and the region we are working in. Therefore, we need the input of the community, of the fishermen, of the major harbor masters, whoever there is. You guys know your area best. So if we come here as a third party, or if the owner of a wind farm, we, of course, have to hear you and to listen to you, because you are here and you know the area. At the moment in Germany, we have 140 experts. Yeah, what can I say more? I think I come to the jobs later, and that's all my 140 colleagues are doing one of those jobs eventually. Every wind farm needs a service concept. That's also one of the concepts we have to develop, depending on the area I am in. So what we think is best for the wind farm, we're talking here, is to have the service harbor here in Morro Bay, of course, because it's the closest way to the wind farm. We will probably have crew transfer vessels to a bigger accommodation warehouse vessel, because you're quite far offshore. So it wouldn't make sense from the 12 hours working time the boys have to cut 3 hours each way. So they just have 6 hours left. And it's really exhausting if you're going out 3 hours offshore in wave, in wind, to an offshore wind farm, then climb the foundation and try to do your job. Believe me, I've done it a couple of times. It's not funny. If the wind's really bad, you feel really bad as well. And of course, we have on-demand support, and we service from the accommodation vessel and from the harbor, the offshore substation and the wind turbines. This picture as well shows you what we're trying to create here. We're trying to create Morro Bay as a service harbor with all the good things actually that would happen to it. So we create new jobs. Now I have the German words, but not the English ones. I'm sorry. That we actually transfer all the real estates into, or we reuse all the real estates. I will show you some pictures what we did in Germany. So we try to do the same here. And we have to establish a certain kind of supply chain here, not only for the wind farm, but also for the service technicians. And the whole picture will actually, from our point of view, benefit the community of Morro Bay quite efficiently and quite good from my perspective, but I'm happy to share all the thoughts about that. So that's what I said before. That's Barhöft. It's actually a really, really small town in the eastern part of Germany where we have our service station. And you see those pictures here that are all East German military buildings. So after the Berlin Wall fell down, they wasn't needed anymore, and so they were, let's say, left behind or left to the nature again. So we decided it's a really ugly point, and Barhöft has not much employment and is, related to tourism to get money in. So we said we might get rid of those ugly things and build a really nice new one, because first was a thought to reuse it, so to remodel it, to use the old structure, but when we saw it from the inside, we said no, it's not working out for us. So that's what we did. We want to do the same thing with your old power plant. So what we want to do is that we use a pump house here, saying welcome to Morro Bay. Then we would like to change it in welcome to Castle Wind in Morro Bay. So and we'll put in the control center, the service station, the warehouse. We want even are thinking about doing a little pier here for service vessels and a nice crane everyone can use. We did the same in Barhöft, show pictures of the harbor in Barhöft as well. And when I saw this decks here, I got really excited, and my bosses as well. So like little kids, because they are perfect facilities for a training center. So what do you have to do when you climb up a wind turbine? You have to have certain trainings. You have to have a training for heights, rescue from heights, because they're quite tall and, well, you go up You have an elevator in every wind turbine, but sometimes they break down, so you have to walk all your way up. It's not so funny. So we actually thinking about making one of them or two of them as a training facility, not only for us, but for other people or companies or economic things as well. This one here is actually has antenna on top of it. It's a pre-warning system for the nuclear power plant. But we need to communicate with our wind farm as well, so we need to have an antenna somewhere. So we thought, instead building a new antenna, which is really ugly, we just put them here because you already have that thing. And maybe we can paint them so they will look much more pretty than they do at the moment. That's actually our thoughts about that. I hope you like it, but as well here we are open for discussion, and maybe you have some really nice input for us what we can do better with them and help us out with some new ideas. So, as said before, we brought a small fishing harbor into new life in east of Germany. So what you see here, so we deal with snow and ice. You are happy you don't have that here, so that's my reason to come here and move here. But sometimes ice comes really handy because that guy here couldn't work if it would be summer, because then he would be drowning or swimming or whatever. So what we did, this dry site was quite old, and for our purpose as a service harbor, it was actually made new, so we upgraded it, if you want. So you see here there are no buildings, there's nothing. This one here is actually a washing house and a harbor center for sailing vessels. If they come in, they can wash. They can wash their clothes. They can wash themselves, and these kind of things. So this is a benefit for the region as well. As well as that, they really made a nice fishing and sailing vessel harbor out of it. They even made it bigger this year. So they had so many vessels who wanted to come in there that they needed to extend it. And it's a protected area. In this area, we have a lot of wildlife, birds, really rare birds. So it's really, really difficult to do anything there and to get permission about it because of environmental issues. And it was a long process, but everyone is happy at the moment. At the moment, it can change every minute. It's the same everywhere. So they got a really nice big crane. It comes in really handy for the fishing vessels. The fishing vessels are here. We here have a rescue vessel from the government. And these things here are for sailing vessels normally. But it's made in winter, so in winter we don't have sailing vessels, so because it's too cold. Actually, I brought you a little video with the interview of the mayor and the harbor master of that little harbor and town. And it might mein Traum war es immer, mit dem Hintern im Wald zu wohnen und mit der Nase am Wasser. Mein Name ist Jan Sprenger und ich betreibe seit 2008 für die Gemeinde den Hafen hier in Behöften. Den ersten Kontakt für den Bau des Windparks hatte ich mit Mitarbeitern von der EnBW, die hier einen Hafen gesucht haben. Wir sind Deutschlands nordöstlichster Festlandzipfel, hier passiert sonst nie was. Als ich gehört habe, hier wird ein Windpark gebaut, da haben wir gedacht, geil, jetzt kommen Menschen. Also es ist eine schöne Entwicklung für diese Region. Mit dem Bau kamen nachher auch die Schiffe rein und als Betreiber des Hafens ist man natürlich interessiert an Schiffe, an Schiffsbewegung hier im Hafen. Das bringt uns ja Einnahmen und Einnahmen auch der Gemeinde, auch wegen den Steuergeldern, das darf man auch nicht vergessen. Das ist auch sehr wichtig.
der EnBW-Leitwarte sind natürlich auch Arbeitsplätze geschaffen worden über den Tourismus hinaus. Mit dem Offshore-Betrieb sind Offshore-Servicekräfte gekommen, Bürokräfte gekommen, die die Überwachung zu tätigen haben. Und dadurch hat sich auch wirtschaftlich verbessert, das Ganze. Mein Name ist Thomas Reichenbach, ich bin Bürgermeister. Das ist schon gigantisch, was da die deutschen Unternehmen leisten im Offshore-Bereich auf dem Wasser, so eine Mühlen überhaupt aufzustellen. Und ich war vor Ort gewesen und es ist einmalig. Nur die Bedenken waren natürlich, dass man den schönen Blick nicht mehr hat aufs Wasser, komischen Windmühlen da, die den ganzen Tag drehen und dass man da eben auch Einbußen hat im Tourismusbereich. Das waren so die Bedenken gewesen, die man hatte. Ne? Aber hat sich so nicht bewahrheitet, das Ganze. Ne? Wir haben ja hier nicht nur Berufsfischer bei uns in Barhöft, sondern immer mehr auch Angeltourismus. Also man weiß da, wo diese Anlage steht, da ist Fisch ohne Ende. Weil die Fische sind ja auch nicht dumm. Da darf keiner rein, hier habe ich meine Ruhe und das ergibt sich so. Wie so eine Art Riff ist das da unten. Ne? Also auch, ich sage es mal so, auch wenn ich kein Meeresbiologe bin, aber das ist so eine positive Auswirkung auch für den Fisch dort.
In unserer Ortslage ist der Windpark eigentlich nur positiv. Er bringt Arbeit, er bringt Beschäftigung. Also wir können da nur Positives sehen. Es ist schon ein gutes Gefühl, wenn man weiß, dass hier Energie hergestellt wird, die sauber ist. Und wenn diese ganze Geschichte von unserem kleinen Hafen aus verwaltet und betrieben wird, macht einen das schon richtig stolz.
That actually, the last picture was a picture of wind farms can be romantic as well. I have a nice ones as well. So maybe I should tell a little story about that town. When we first came there, that town didn't really had a mobile phone antenna. So if you wanted to use your mobile phone there, you were lost because it wasn't working. It always told you you don't have connection. So it was a perfect spot for us when we wanted to do quiet works. We always went there to the service station because we knew that our mobile phones weren't working. But we have to communicate with our service technicians and with the rest of the world, because most people use mobile phones nowadays. So what we did is that we installed on our premises, on our part of the land, antenna for mobile phones. And since then, the whole region is able to have mobile phone connection. And that's also a benefit. I know in the year 2010, you would never actually realize that there could be a region without mobile phone connection. But there is, not only in Germany. I brought you as well some impressions from our service center. So this is also new jobs that would be created if you operate a wind farm. This is only a small part of that room, just to give you an impression to it. These are my colleagues. You see, they're really hardworking. And actually, this guy here, he is within EBW since 25 years. And he was working in this house of Germany where EBW has its headquarters. And he decided to move up to Barhöft with the whole family. And yeah, it worked out really well. So that is what we expect here in Morro Bay as well, so that we create new jobs, and that people come here and stay here, and they feel home. Okay. Nice pictures from our service and maintenance. You will see this man over here. He is called Arne. His name is Arne. The next video is with him. It's also really, really impressive, so I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. This is what Allah said, a normal European standard offshore wind structure. So this one is actually found it in the ground, what we can't do here. So please do not put too much interest in those boat landings here. So it might look different. Even the vessels we can use would probably look different. So that's why you won't find any vessel pictures in my presentation. As I said, we come here to stay and to operate the wind farm for 25 years, as long as we are allowed to operate those wind farms according to the legislation and regulation. This means, of course, that we create new jobs, and this is one of the key factors to support development of local competence. So our goal is to develop and operate the wind farm, to have local employees and building up know-how here, which can be spread all over the US or the world if you want to think big. The potential number of directly employed is in the O&M phase between 45 to 75. It's depending on the size of the wind turbine, the wind turbine you choose, and these kind of things, the foundation. So actually about the whole work. Those actually, it's only the direct employed. So there's no hotel, no restaurants in this number. So, and the supply chain is not in there as well. So the number would be quite bigger than this over there. We will implement a training program because offshore wind is new. It's new to everyone. It was new in Europe a couple of years ago. So you need to have special training on it. As I said, you go offshore, you be on a vessel, you have the waves, you have all the movements, and then you are supposed to work. So yeah, you have to get the feeling, I would say. We had one service technician, he was really fond of going offshore, and the first trip he made, and he got really sick. And he came back shore. We had to bring him back shore. And he now works in the control center because he decided for himself that it's not going to work for his body. But there are opportunities for every kind of person, and that's the message. And even though they are not able to go offshore because their body doesn't want to be, we create onshore jobs as well. And since we bring yeah. I don't forget the word, it's okay. The benefits would be to support the development of local knowledge, of course, and establish a professional network. So what we want to do is not to bring like 80 Germans down here and they do the jobs. No, we want the local people to have the jobs. With our help, with our support in the first time, and then maybe the rest. So what jobs do we actually have? What jobs or what qualification do you need to be within offshore wind? So we need engineers. I'm an engineer, so it could be important or maybe beneficial that you don't only have the service technicians. So we need electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, civil engineers for the foundation. We need health and safety specialists. We need someone who actually knows something about IT and condition monitoring systems. So what you normally do in offshore wind is that you control the whole wind farm from your control center. So you have your normal maintenance works, of course, those things you have to do in an interval, but then you try to do as less offshore as possible because it costs money, it's a HSE problem or it's a safety reason, and that's why you try to get every, I say it in good English, fuck up before it happens. I'm sorry for the word, but I don't have a better one at the moment. Then, of course, you need to have the control room technicians and wind turbine technicians and the technicians for the foundation as well. So you see there's a lot of potential. You have to have a pre-qualification, of course. So someone who's just finished high school would not be appropriate. So if you have an apprenticeship or you went to university, college, and then from there on, we train the guys. We also have some fishermen in our group. They're working on the vessels. So there's a lot of opportunities. Even in the office, because we need work planner. So what the guys do, they are offshore, they work offshore, they have a tough day, it's stressful, so they need to get everything prepared beforehand. So they have their stuff, they have their tools, they have their equipment and these kind of things, and it's all done onshore. It's the most important job, to help them to get their job done. The next step would be recruiting. Then you would get some safety training, sea survival, rescue from heights, first aid, firefighting, manual handling, you name it, you get it. And then we actually think about joint teams. So we won't let them go alone, of course. So one of the expert who has a lot of Erfahrung. Thank you. Yeah, it's getting late. So this is actually what we want to do and where we see the benefits in what we can do from our knowledge and from our experiences. And this is a really nice video. I hope you enjoy it. And this is with Arne, our service technician. He is with us since the beginning, since 2010. And
ich bin Arne Niels, Servicetechniker Offshore bei der MBW. Mit meinen Kollegen kümmere ich mich darum, dass der Windpark Baltic 1 läuft. Ja, also ich denke mal, wir sind schon mehr die Piraten von der MBW. Früher wurde aus Wind Mehl gemahlen. Wir machen jetzt mittlerweile aus Wind Strom. Ich finde das klasse. Ich sage immer zu meiner Familie, das ist mein Park, weil ich leide mit. Wenn die Anlagen defekt sind, was zum Glück sehr selten ist, dann geht man rein und wird überlegt, was kann es sein. Die Stillstandszeiten so kurz wie möglich zu halten. Das ist unser Ziel. Der Baueffekt ist bei mir dann da, wenn wir einen Fehler zum Beispiel auf der Anlage haben, keiner so richtig kennt. Man fährt raus, man hat so eine Idee, das könnte das sein, das könnte das sein. Und man hat den Fehler endlich gefunden und die Anlage läuft wieder. Das ist dann dieses, geil. Wir können die Anlagen nicht bei allen Wellenhöhen anfahren. Das 1,40 Meter ist da schon das absolute Maximum. Dann kommt dann der Überstieg, wo man dann sagt, endlich nach oben. Dann kommt der Aufstieg. Wir müssen 73 Meter an der Leiter stellenweise hoch. Das ist auf jeden Fall kein Job für Weicheier. Wenn wir was vergessen, keiner bringt uns das raus. Also ich kann nicht Johnny anrufen und sagen, Johnny, bring mir mal bitte die Rohrzangen, die habe ich jetzt vergessen. Dann kann ich halt meine Arbeit nicht erledigen. Also wenn die ins Maschinenhaus kommen, dann muss man die Hauptverriegelung öffnen. Das ist wie zwei Flügel, die dann halt aufgehen, ne? So aufklappen. Und dann sieht man den Park, man sieht die Umgebung, man kann das sehen, man kann wenn man Glück hat, Dänemark sehen. Das ist schon toll. Das sind 12-Stunden-Tage, darf man nicht vergessen. Aber der Job macht mir Spaß. Deswegen fahre ich jeden Tag raus. Man ist dann schon teilweise sogar ein bisschen aufgeregt, was kommt denn heute, was erwartet mich auf Arbeit. War in meinem alten Job nicht so. Das Team ist Hammer, ist gut. Geilster Arbeitsplatz der Welt. Für mich.
And they are allowed to eat outside as well. Food is the most important thing. That was Arne. Now 2 slides. I'll make them big. I normally have another picture there with snow. I deleted it because you will never have snow here, I hope. So, but what you will have here is fog. As you can see, no. And we also had a tornado once. And that's what symbolizes heavy wind and fog. It's nature, you can't control it, you don't want to control it. But you have to deal with it, and it's possible, it's doable. And this is the message of these pictures. I don't have a video or a picture showing high waves, because if the waves are too high, we're not going out. It's suicidal. We don't do that. wind parks can be romantic. That's what I meant. I brought some more pictures. I love it. I love it when we go with the vessel from the wind farm back to shore and we have exactly those views. And these are views that are like 10 meters away from the wind turbine or from the offshore substation. So when you see it from shore, well, you can't see like a little asparagus looking out in the water, but that's it. And I think that's the message. So most people in Germany, and that's what they're afraid of, that they destroy the view, but they actually like it. Well, it depends on the person, I guess. There are probably a lot of people that would hate it, but the most people I talk to, they really enjoy the view. And this is the last sentence for me, because we're way over time already. But I like talking, so I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I give you some information about what we did and what we want to do here, and some experiences from my point of view. So happy to answer any question there is, maybe any.
All right. Thank you, Maren, for that presentation. So this will be the last time. Well, actually, I lied already. You can pass up your cards at any time. What I'm going to do is kind of go around now and collect any remaining ones you have, any written cards. We were trying to get them as we went so we could dive right in. Okay? If something comes up as we're answering a question, just jot it down and bring it up. You can just walk right up and just put it on the desk. Don't worry about that.
I would like just one sentence. We brought some goodies for you back in the bag. This little small plastic thingies there stands, we make it happen with the wind turbines. They're actually gummy bears. Just in case you guys were wondering. So.
My favorite, so I'm going to be stuffing those in my pockets. No. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to dive in on the questions. Just to give you a heads up about the question sets, the things that you're most interested in, the families of questions, are environmental impact. Okay. The other one is like maintenance and installation issues, like what's the impact there. And then a big, all of these actually have a pretty substantial amount in those individual categories. And then one of the biggest is the economic impact questions. What's the economic impact? And then there's a couple of outliers that we're going to get to. I am not going to, as a general practice, combine questions because I don't want to miss anything, although there are a few in the environmental that are almost exactly alike, so I am going to combine those. And if I miss something, then you can kind of catch up by when we go into the second phase, which is we're going to have you just be able to ask direct questions from the microphone. All right, so we ready to dive in?
Sure.
Okay. So, why don't we stay with the economic impact since we were just there and then we're kind of in theme. And I'm just going to start going through these. The first one is, what are the average pay for the local workers? There's a set of 3 questions. We're going to ask all 3 and then you can. Are there any transferable skills from the Diablo Canyon employees who will be no longer working at the plant? Anything is set aside to retrain them. And then what will your collaboration be with Cal Poly to teach, train, and employ Cal Poly grads? So the 3 questions are average pay, transferable skills to Diablo Canyon, and then collaboration with Cal Poly.
I guess I'll take them. Let me start with the last question, actually. Yes, there are transferable skills. However, as you saw from Maren's presentation, the number of employees necessary to service an installation is a lot less than it was required to service Diablo Canyon. So no, we will not be able to employ 1,500 people, especially nuclear engineers. However, engineers are engineers, and there is a lot of transferable skills once you're an engineer. I'm an electrical engineer, but I can go to mechanical engineering very easily. You just get trained in a certain way. So yes, there is quite a lot of transferability that could be done, and as you heard, there will be specialized training. So as long as a person has basic skills in whatever that discipline is, we will provide specialized training to work on the wind farm. The types of pay for those jobs are very similar to what any operating plant will have. It's not much different. So I can't really say exactly what the numbers are, but it would be quite comparable to what the Diablo Canyon technicians or engineers were paid, because they're basically the same job families. As it comes to Cal Poly, absolutely. We work very closely with Cal Poly, and in fact, Trident Winds did commission Cal Poly to do economic benefits analysis for the city of Morro Bay. They did that at the economics department. We will make that study available. It was using regular information available from law offices, job offices and so on. But it is an interesting study that said, if the city does nothing and the wind farm just kind of happens to be there, there will be a direct economic impact benefit to the city itself, just because there are people that are working there, the people have to come and spend money on food and hotels and whatever, but they're there. And so they pay taxes, there is increase in fuel usage. I mean, all those things become a basic economic impact. And then additional economic or direct economic impact is from everything that what Maren talked about: creation of the new center, rehabilitation of structures, harbor, and so on and so on. And so this basic number is just that, it's base, but the potential is significantly higher. And how big that potential can be, you can only imagine yourself. Think about other things that can come up. It's almost like when you build an airport, there is communities and businesses that spur around it. This kind of has the same impact. Like Maren said, the community, the little community on the Baltic Sea became not so little anymore, because they grew as a part, and because of the wind farm just being off their shores, even bringing in cell towers, which didn't exist to begin with. So I think that covers all the three questions that were there.
I think so. All right, so we'll move to the next one. Our old power plant generated considerable money for the city. What can we expect from Trident when in the generation stage? So it's not just the construction stage, but the generation stage.
I'm not sure I can really answer that question, because I don't really know what the revenues were generated. Not what they were. What were the sources of revenue? In other words, was there? I don't really know, so I don't think I can answer that question. I just know that if there is a wind farm sitting out there, and until there is all the permits in place, we can't even discuss with city to use of their infrastructure. Like, for example, the outflow tunnel that we're planning to use, we can't even start discussing anything about the lease agreement until we have permits in hand, because it's a property and you can't really determine what the property use is until you have it. So it's kind of a question, maybe subjective, saying, yes, there will be direct benefit to the city, but to quantify it, the only thing we were able to do is this study that was done that quantified specific areas, and that study, I hope that the city will put it on the website so that people can read it. It's nothing proprietary. It was just done to just see what it will be.
Okay, and that'll have some more specifics per kind of different parts of the potential. It
doesn't go into, no, it looks at this basic economic benefit just because there are employment in the city that it didn't have. It didn't look at, you have a plant that's been shut down and now there is new generation and now you're going to get something else. Because we can't really quantify it. So it quantified what it could quantify. I'm just saying that this is a base from which more can come with time.
Okay. Okay. So there's a whole set here about the job creation, and also with a kind of a focus on how many will be local. I think you touched on it a little bit, but let me just, I'm going to read you all of them real quickly because they're very similar. If ENBW is here to stay, where does the labor force come from? How many of the labor force will be local? How many full-time jobs will be created? And let's see, then, yeah, how many will be, if there's so many positions, how many are local again? And then how many will be American citizens that will be employed. So that's the heart of 4 or 5 questions.
Yes, I think I made it pretty clear in the presentation. So our goal is not to bring Germans here. So our goal is to employ local people. And our goal is to have, I don't say a percentage, but most likely 90%. But don't nail me down on this. If there are the people here with the skills we need and with the qualifications we need, and we can train them, or they can be trained to go where they want to be, they're more than welcome to join the team. So I will not bring Germans here. They were all US citizens, most of it. Maybe 1 or 2 Germans coming. Maybe.
Oops.
Maybe I will join the community because I don't have ice and snow here. Well, no, but be serious again. The goal is to have the local people employed.
Right.
Okay, great, thank you. This is another one that I think was answered before, and I think it'll be addressed by the economic impact report. But this, just to let you know what the question was, is what is the impact of economic impact for Morro Bay? Another question here. This is very California specific question because of our housing issues. It says housing is an issue in the Morro Bay area. They're looking. Are they looking to buy land? I'm assuming they're talking about the joint venture around the power plant to accommodate the workforce.
Well, we didn't really go that far. Realizing we don't even have the site yet and we haven't started the project, that's a very, very far-reaching question. But in general, I'm not even sure we can answer at this point. The city doesn't own the land around the power plant. The power plant is a private property of the company Vistra, I think, is the company that bought Dynegy. So what they're going to do, how they're going to do, is hard to say at this point, and it's just too early to even think about it. I just cannot answer that question at all.
Okay.
No, but maybe it's the workers don't want to be close to their working place, so I wouldn't like to see my work every day in my free time, so I don't think that we have done it before.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I would just take note that I think it is just part of the issue of this area is the whole housing issue is a tough one for workers. So,
yes.
Okay. And then there's one in here that I think is more of a suggestion, but can you make the big building a museum of electricity? So.
Again, we don't own the building. Vistra's own the building. City doesn't own the building. What the company will do with the building, we will see. We're just basically saying we can certainly repurpose the building, and a lot of things could be done with the building. At this point, it's very, very hard to say what will be. We're just saying that we can reuse the infrastructure as necessary, and that's about as far as we can say.
Okay, great. All right, so again, if you have more questions, you can write them down on the cards and keep bringing them up, and I'm happy to sort them here and put them in their proper spots. But that's basically the ones around economic impact, at least what we have so far. So I'm going to move into another topic that's pretty different than anything that we've heard, and that's the environmental impact. And I just want to there is several that are almost identical. And here we go. So let me just read them. What are we doing to protect migrating birds? What's the impact on marine life and the impact on birds and migratory patterns? How will you protect migrating birds from flying into the turbines? Another one on migration, and another one. So there's really a lot of interest in that. And then from a technical standpoint, I think there's a question about if these are anchored to the sea floor, how does that affect migration? And let's see.
How does that affect what?
How does it affect migration? In other words, if they're moored to the bottom, does that affect any kind of migration patterns of, like, I would imagine whales or
okay.
seal? Right. So why don't we just start there
So let me start.
on that set?
Okay, so let's start with birds. There is a national lab in Tri-City, Washington called Pacific Northwest National Labs. And they've done a lot of research on and assessment on marine environment. They also have a marine science lab at the school in Washington that does a lot of work on mammals and all the sea creatures per se. So there is a lady there by the name of Andrea Cooping, who unfortunately could not come here, but I would love to bring her here at some point. And she said something that made a lot of sense, and it really is reality. She said, the pelagic birds are a little bit smarter than their onshore relatives. And the reason is actually simple. It's much harder to get food in the ocean than it is to get food on land. So the birds on land, they navigate themselves by different means. They don't navigate themselves by the air pressure. Where if you go offshore, those birds are a lot smarter, actually. Why? When they migrate, they know where to go. And how do they know? Well, they actually sense the pressure that's out there. Think about what the wind farm does. It changes the pressure, the air pressure. So when pelagic birds move between, they don't go into storms. They avoid the storms because it's a different air pressure. So effectively, the wind farm creates a disturbance that the birds avoid. And there was a lot of studies done in UK and with the actual factual data that shows birds don't go into the wind farm, they go around it. So if you think about that map over there, right, it's an area that's north-south, and migrating birds go north-south. They actually go to New Zealand and Australia. They go west more so. And so effectively, there is very little disturbance to their pattern where they go, but on top of that, they just don't go into the farm itself. And the studies exist. If you want to see them, you know, we can, and we did talk actually to UK representatives to bring all that data over so that you can have the access to it, and we will do that. But that is what we see in experience in the North Sea. Granted, there are different birds here. There is one particular bird that's on the endangered species list, and that's the short-tailed albatross that does fly that far, but they fly very low because, again, the food is at the sea level. It's not 30 meters or 90 feet above the sea level, and that makes a big difference. And so from all the experience, the experience in Europe, and from all the studies that have been done, we don't believe that we're going to have a lot of impact, but impacts happen. You know, we live in an environment where impacts happen. But on the flip side, if we don't do anything, we will only make the environment for all those creatures even worse. And that is, if you've seen the latest studies that came from the environmental panel at the United Nations, it's kind of scary. It really is. And so, yes, there will be impacts, but then you have to compare what is worse. As it relates to sea life or the migratory whales, dolphins, whatever, what we're putting into the ocean are pretty big structures. It's interesting if you put in scale the whale compared to a mooring line, which is 3,300 feet long. That whale looks very, very tiny. Things that we put in the ocean are big. When you hear about mammals tangling up in mooring lines, they tangle up in crab pot lines, which are very thin. It's like your thumb. But no one, as far as I know, have ever heard about a whale tangling up in a mooring line or a floating oil platform. Why? Those mooring lines are under tension. And because they don't create loops, nobody can tangle into it. What would probably be something that we can't prevent, it will be the fishing gear that may get stuck on those mooring lines. And those are the things that we'll have to inspect and make sure that things just don't hang there. But nobody will be able to actually get tangled in a mooring line that's under tension at a specific tension. And so from that point of view, you know, you're not really impacting a lot the marine life, even the migrating marine life, because it's just structures that they avoid. They just go around it, and that's about it.
Okay, great. There's a more specific question in this family, which is, what are your plans for the 2 wildlife rehabilitation centers, Pacific Wildlife Care and the Marine Mammal Center, currently on the PG&E property, where you propose a service station? Question mark.
Where we propose a service station?
Yeah, so will you propose a service station for this wildlife? I guess that's the implication is that because there's rehabilitation centers that are associated with PG&E on their property, would you propose the same thing, or is that something that...
It's way too detailed and it's way too far in advance to even attempt to answer that question. That will all come out as we do all the permitting work and understand, you know, what we have out there, what we have to deal here. And as things progress, then we probably will be able to address that question, but not right now.
Okay. Great. So I'm going to keep moving since we're starting to get on our 2-hour mark, and we have a whole set around this maintenance and installation. And I'm just going to start diving in, and hopefully we can get through as many as possible. How many wind turbines are you planning, and how tall are they?
The quantity of the wind turbines that we'll install will depend on the size of the project area that we will end up with, and it will depend on what we find or not find on the bottom of the ocean floor. So what we are projecting is about 100 wind turbines. It could be less, it could be more. Cannot tell you that right now. How big are they going to be? They're going to be the biggest size available on the market. Today, the largest size of the turbine that has been announced by GE a few months ago is 12 megawatts. 12 megawatts is a very large turbine. It is about 700 feet tall, with a blade about 1.5 times length of a football field. Big structures, but they also generate a lot of energy. So 1 gigawatt plant, which is what the Morro Bay plant was and what we're projecting to generate, will generate enough electricity for the whole St. Lucie Obispo County. And if we can generate that much energy using less than 100 turbines, that's pretty darn good.
Okay, great. So, and then this is several questions are about the maintenance and the. So this is, how will the towers be maintained? And for example, the shore site facilities, docking, mooring, space needed. Is there any kind of thought about how that would look?
You want to take that one?
I will try to take that one. I hope I got it right. So when we say we want to take or to make the pump house of the old power plant to our new service station, that's pretty much the size we think we need. Maybe it's a bit big or bigger than we really need it. I don't have it in square meters or yard or feet for you guys, but I can, for the next session, I can make a slide with detailed information, and when it comes to that one. What we have seen in Barhöft, I think I have some measurements. Well, anyways, and the first one was how we maintain the tower.
The towers, or what?
Yes,
what
the tower of the wind turbines.
Yeah, I imagine that's both the tower and the
tower.
Turbine,
yeah. There are various ways to do that. What we normally do is that we have rope access guys there. So, anyways, if you go there by a vessel and you see up the tower, you can see pretty much everything when you use binoculars. So you see if there is a crack in the welding, or if there are corrosion issues. If it's really worse, you can see it. So what we do is a visual inspection from the vessel or from the foundation where the wind turbine is installed. The other thing is that when we are not sure, and at least in a specific time interval, in Germany we do it with rope access. I'm not sure about your legislation or your standards here, so I don't say a time frame. So I really have to look into your technical technology standards if there is something written down. Rope access has specialized people, of course, industrial rope access. It's not easy, but you can get them. And then the newest way to do it is with drones. There are wind farms in Europe who do the plate inspection for the wind turbine with helicopter, but we don't do it. What we try to do is to do the plate inspection and the tower inspection by drones or rope access and visual. You always have those three.
Right. And I guess to add to that, when you look when you maintain the floating support structure, instead of drones, you're going to be using remote underwater vehicles. Yes. You don't do divers, you just use the autonomous vehicles. That's what you use.
Of course, if everything under the sea level will be done by ROVs,
right.
And only if you have a really, really strong feeling that there's really something wrong with your foundation, you will bring down divers. Right. But it's not standard. We would like to avoid it, or we want to avoid it because of safety issues.
Okay, and I'm going to do another question to kind of follow up on that question, because I think the maintenance is not just out in the ocean, but also inshore. So I think the question was also about what's going to happen onshore with, is there going to be, and then to follow that up is the assembly and decommissioning of the floating turbines. Where is that? Will that be done on the Central Coast? And where will the tugs for that service function or be stationed? Some of these are very specific about the future details, but that people are interested.
Yeah. So the floating support structures, most of them, not all of them, but the basic principle is towards fabrication completely on shore. What you saw in the video of the wind float, that whole unit was fabricated on shore and then towed, fully assembled, fully commissioned to the station. And reverse happened as well. So the maintenance philosophy, the principle of the maintenance philosophy is if there is a major repair required, that unit would be towed to shore and all the major repairs will be done onshore. Unfortunately, the water depth in the coastal waters of the Central Coast, like in Morro Bay, is too shallow. You can't come here. So we cannot answer right now where they're going to be assembled, because we also need to have fairly deep port, or where they're going to be maintained when it's a major repair. That will all come out through a period of time when we're going to be developing construction operation plan. Yeah. In that period of time, we will define exactly where the units will be assembled, how they're going to be transported, where they're going to be maintained, and what will be done where. Again, all those site assessment plans, construction operation plans, all will be available to public and all the information will be there. But at this point, I just cannot tell you where. I just know that principle-wise, assembly of the units and the major repairs will be done on shore. And because of that, the only thing you need is a tug. You don't need big installation vessels. You don't need heavy lift cranes. You don't need floating cranes, because all of that infrastructure will be shore-based infrastructure.
Okay. All right, so in this one, I'm going to combine two questions. One of the questions is are the turbines anchored to the bottom? And somebody saw a TV show that said that one of the workers said that it was difficult to secure the turbines to the ocean floor. So can you address that whole issue of...
Okay, most of the turbines today, all those 16 plus gigawatts of installed capacity, are fixed foundations. They're very different compared to the floating foundations. They physically sit on the ocean floor, and there are various methods how they attach to the ocean floor. We're not doing that. So we're not talking about that. What we do is we put big, big anchors in the ocean floor. Same anchors as used in the boat, except that they're much, much bigger. And yes, I have a picture of that not very large anchor, even though it's going to look very large, but we'll just use a bigger anchor because the units that we'll be putting on are going to be bigger units. So this is an anchor. Where's your? Oh, here it is. Right. So this is an anchor, and this is a person. So you can see how big the anchor is, right? That's what we put on the ocean floor. And it's an embedded anchor. In other words, the anchor gets embedded in the ocean floor, and the only thing you see coming out of it is a chain or something that you will connect the mooring line to. These are reversible operations. That same anchor can be pulled out. There are different companies. One is called Bruce, the other one is called Reichhoff, where I think they actually have videos on their website where you can see how those anchors are installed and how they disengaged and pulled out of the ocean floor. There are different methods to install, but one way or another, it's an anchor. It's not something that's a fixed foundation. Because of that, there are benefits. The disturbance of the ocean floor is minimal, both on the installation and on decommissioning. Second, this is a seismic area. We all know that. And because these are anchors and because it's floating, it doesn't really matter when the earth shakes. Where if you would have a fixed foundation, it would matter a lot because you're shaking a fixed structure. Yeah. So there's a lot of differences between what we would do with floating structures versus fixed foundations. And part of that question was actually related to fixed foundations because it's not applicable to floating.
Okay, great. And I'm noticing that we're getting up on our time, so I've got an idea. If we don't get to your question, if you would be willing to come up and then put your email on this, then I would imagine that you would be willing to email them an answer to them?
Sure.
If we don't get to them? Okay, so if you notice that...
As long as it's not 100 questions.
No, we're getting down to a few. So if you notice that I don't get to your question, please come up and give me your email so that we can get it to them and they can get an answer back to you. And let's go through maybe a couple of more before we wrap up so that we can let you go and stick to our time frame. Okay, so this one, this is it's kind of a blend of two. It's maintenance and economic impact. It's a curious question in the sense that I haven't thought of it, is how much of the energy produced will come to Morro Bay?
Well, we're delivering into the California grid. We can't tell you how much of that energy comes physically here because grid is grid. Electrons go where there is a load. And so it's impossible to answer. That said, if the Morro Bay creates its own community choice aggregator, which is, I believe, the resolution that was passed some point ago, then it will be up to that community choice aggregator how much energy they're going to buy for the use locally. But at this point, it goes into the grid and it gets dispersed, and whoever gets it, that gets it. Remember, the law says that utilities have to buy 50% of their generation from renewable sources, and that's going to go into a higher percentage. So one way or another, it's going to go into the grid somehow.
Okay, great. So this one is wind versus wave energy. So this individual wants to know, like, comparing them, what's the dependability, the maintenance of equipment, the production of energy, the fluctuation of the energy produced. So, why wind or wave?
Gee, putting me on the spot, huh? I'm going to give you my opinion, which is based on, and I know some people are not going to like the answers I'm going to give, so I'm just going to say that. This opinion is based on 6 years' worth of working in wave energy, setting up a European Ocean Energy Association, doing a demonstration project, and doing a lot of assessment on what it would take for the wave energy to become commercial. At the end of those 6 years, I came to my personal conclusion that it's not going to happen, as I said, while I'm on this planet. Why? Wave energy is limited by its physical size because of the waves. The waves have certain amplitude, certain periodicity, and so on. And because of that, the size of the devices is limited as well. In my personal opinion, 5,000 patents that exist in wave energy and no electrons are produced from it do not really demonstrate that the inventors either invented the right widget or put the attention to where it should have been, and what it should be doing is really looking at the efficiency. Because right now, any wave energy device you want to take is going to convert 30% of available resource into electricity, and that's just not enough to cover the cost of the capital equipment. At Principal Power, we had a project that was funded by Department of Energy, which was called Wind Wave Float. We looked at using the wind float structure to put wave energy converters, or so-called power takeoff mechanisms, into the structure. We did that because I said, God, it got to be economical because we're getting rid of all this housing and permitting and mooring lines and cables. It has to be economical. At that point, I was still believing that it could happen. Unfortunately, on the best day, after we put 5 power takeoff mechanisms into that structure of the wind float that you saw, we would be able to generate about 2 megawatts. If I can put 9 megawatts up there, and on a good day, I generate 2 megawatts out of 5 principles or 5 additional pieces of equipment, it just made no economic sense. And so unfortunately today, wave energy is not at the stage where it can be commercially deployed or it can provide something that's economically viable. And that's my personal opinion. Underline, personal.
Okay. So because we're past 8 o'clock, I want to wrap it up for tonight. I want to thank everybody. We did not have a chance to have you come up and ask questions directly, and we apologize for that. We had a lot of information to share. I hope you got a lot of your questions answered. We really appreciate you. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your patience and attention, and I'm sure we'll be back to share more information as the project progresses.
Well, thank you for being here. It's great to see your interest.
And next time we will be more time optimized.
Right. Oh, boy. Yes, right here.